Thank you for tuning in to watch this video of this presentation. My name is Uche, Eseosa Ekhator-Mobayode. This is joint work with Johannes Hoogeveen. We are both staff of the MENA region of the Poverty and Equity Global Practice at the World Bank Group. This is submission number 38, titled Microdata Collection and Openness in the Middle East and North Africa, MENA. With this work, just to give an overview of what we do, we visit the public-facing websites of National Statistical Offices, NSO, in the MENA region and access whether core microdata sets have been collected, and in cases where they've been collected, whether they are up to date and made available to researchers. The focus here is on population and economic censuses as well as surveys from um, price data, consumption, labor, health, and establishment. And based on this exercise, we make suggestions that is aimed at improving the way NSOs provide um, microdata online to enhance their transparency. Why is this work important? And why do we even focus on microdata? First of all, microdata access is a very important component of transparency and data openness in general. Microdata in itself is important to researchers in development who use this data to enrich development research as well as calculate different statistics. In MENA, however, there is no tradition of making microdata available. In 2019, only 7 countries out of the 20 countries in MENA um, provided public or licensed access to household budget surveys. These surveys are really important. They are the surveys that the World Bank uses to calculate poverty estimates. And so, in cases where they are not available or in cases where they are outdated, it limits the policy use of the estimates that are calculated. So, first of all, what we do before we go ahead and access whether data was collected and if it's made available is decide on what data categories to assess. The Sustainable Development Goals provide a global agenda for microdata that's needed to track development progress. To facilitate reporting on these Sustainable Development Goals, a broad range of data is needed. In 2015, the Data for Development report recommends that countries derive their data from a total of 8 sources, which included census data, household surveys, agricultural surveys, administrative data, among others. Here in this paper, we focused on establishment surveys, price data, individual and household data, and census data. These data sets are important to track some of these goals and have been used in various instances to calculate important statistics. Establishment data, for example, is the underlying source data for GDP estimation and it's used to estimate labor market demand. Price data is the underlying data for calculating CPIs and PPIs, which are used as proxies for inflation. And so the data we're looking for under that category CPI, and I need to mention that data we're looking for under the establishment data category would be enterprise surveys or other surveys of industry. Labor force data is important. Another important type of microdata that we look out for under the individual and household data. This is used to calculate various employment statistics, including employment rate, consumption data, or welfare surveys are important. They are used to calculate poverty statistics and wealth of household. Under this data category, we are looking for important data sets like household budget surveys that I mentioned earlier, household income and expenditure surveys, as well as living standards measurement surveys. And then another important data category is a health data category, where here we're looking for data sets like demographic and health surveys, multiple indicator cluster surveys. These surveys are important for calculating key health statistics, including fertility and various maternal and child health statistics, as well as various incidences of diseases. And then under the census data, we're looking for both population census and economic census data, which are very important data sets that are used as the statistical framework from which samples of surveys are selected, and also to understand the demographic of a country over time. So across all of these data categories, we visit the website, public facing website of NSOs, and to find whether or not they have recent data. We define recent data based on two criteria. First, based on the data at hand for enterprise consumption, labor force, and health surveys. A survey that is recent would not be more than 5 years old. So typically, um, we expect that these surveys are collected at least once in 5 years, and this is a little bit relaxed. For example, the World Bank expects consumption and welfare surveys, like the household budget surveys, to be collected once in 3 years. But if a household survey is collected once in 5 years, we consider it as recent. For price survey data, typically countries collect this data multiple times in a year, monthly, to calculate CPI or PPI. For our definition, if the data is not more than 1 year old, then it's recent. For census data, typically countries collect this once in every decade. So any data set that is not more than 10 years old is recent. Also, even though we conduct this exercise between February and April of 2021 because of COVID-19, and the shutdowns or lockdowns are related to COVID-19 in 2020, we use 2019 as a reference year. So essentially, for enterprise consumption, labor force, and health surveys, any survey that's collected between after 2014 or later would be recent, and any survey before that would not be recent. For price data, it would be data that's collected 2018 or later, and for census data, it would be data that's collected 2009 or later. So once that definition of what is recent is clear, we divide microdata accessibility into three categories. So we say there's no openness if no representative data set from that data category is not available on the website, or the link to one is not available. So it's either the NSO makes it available on their website, or they provide a link where a data user visiting the website can find the data. We say data set has a satisfactory openness if the recent microdata is available on the website but is restricted. In this case, users would need to make a request, create an account before they grant, or create an account before they granted access to the data. And this is satisfactory because sometimes custodians of data want to know who's using their data, and this is acceptable. So we say that it's satisfactory openness. For excellent openness, this would be a situation where the microdata is available publicly on the website. You do not need to create an account or do anything else. You just go to the website and you have immediate access to the data. And so this is how we categorize whether or not the data is open. So what do the results show us? So here, remember I said, like, first of all, we visit the website and look at whether the data was collected at all. So here is a summary of the results. Across the 20 countries, we were looking for 7 data categories. So essentially, what we were hoping to see was 140 data sets. Of those potential 140 data sets that could have been collected, only 78 of them were collected. So if you look at the price surveys, for example, all of the countries except for Yemen have recent price surveys. For consumption surveys, you have 12 countries. For labor force surveys, 11 countries have collected that recently. Health surveys, 9 countries. Population census, 13 countries. And for economic census, 9 countries. Also across countries, you have some countries that do better than others. For example, Saudi Arabia, as well as West Bank and Gaza, have collected all of the 7 data recently. You also have countries like Jordan as well as Egypt that follow behind closely. They've collected at least 6. And then on the other end, you have countries that haven't done so well, like the UAE, who only has collected 1 out of the 7, as well as a country like Algeria and Lebanon. that have only collected 2 out of the 7. So essentially, there's like a disparity in how countries perform. What we then do after now, like all of the surveys have been collected, 78 out of the 140. Of the 78, which of this data set is actually available to data users? So what we find is that even when data is collected, um, it is rarely made available. Of the 78 data sets that were collected, only 14 has some degree of accessibility to the data users. And of the 14, only 3 have excellent openness, which is a case where you go to the website and it's downloadable immediately. For the remaining 11 data sets, data users would need to make a request, create an account, or both to get access to the data. So the finding here is that data is not collected as frequently as it should be collected. And when it's collected, it's even rarely made available. We acknowledge that NSO's website are not the only places that you can find microdata for a country, even though um, a, a, a data user who is interested in the data for a country should ideally find it on the NSO's website. However, there are instances where NSOs don't do that either because it's public knowledge that data set should be available somewhere else. So because of that, we also take a look at other international microdata libraries or repositories where the data for a country could be available. We look at the microdata library of the World Bank. We also look at the microdata library for IPUMs. We look at DHS data, mixed data, which is the multiple indicator cluster surveys, and also we also look at Eurostat. And so when we do that, the data accessibility for the 140 data sets that we look at improves. It goes from 14 to 22. So there's about a 50% increase in the data sets that are available. Still, given this improvement, microdata access in minor is still poor. So during this exercise, we find out that there are actually some low-hanging fruits. NSOs could immediately improve microdata accessibility on their websites with little or no marginal cost. One of the instances where this could be done is with the establishment of its category. So remember when I showed this table where data has been collected for each category, only 5 countries actually collect enterprise data. And of those 5 countries, only 1 country makes it available. However, the World Bank has a series of enterprise surveys that NSOs can easily incorporate into their statistical plan and provide a link to the enterprise survey websites on their own website, and that immediately makes it available to data users visiting the website of NSOs. And in addition to that, they could also provide links to other international microdata libraries and repositories where the data for their country could be. That could be IPUM's data that provide access to censuses, as well as all of the other DHS and mixed data as well. Another place where success could be achieved quite easily would be in the price data category. So you see here that almost all of the countries have recent price data. However, none of them make price data available. So making that data available would be useful to a range of data users. And lastly, it would be to release census data. Again, a good number of countries already collect census data. Releasing a subset of this data set would be important to reach researchers who are interested in disaggregated census data. So in general, what we see is that in addition to what NSOs could do to improve data access, they could also do a few other things to improve the experience of users visiting their websites. For example, in cases where the website of an NSO is not in English, it would be good practice to provide an English version of the website, and more importantly, an adequate English version of the website. For example, the Persian version of the Iranian Central Statistical Office is not adequately translated in English. There are some data sets that are in the Persian version that is not available on the English version. Also, another way that NSOs can improve the experience of data users would be to provide data tab and a search button on their website landing page to make it easy to navigate the website. And as I said before, provide links to other websites with where a country's data could be. And finally, provide clarity for requesting restricted data. So when the data is restricted, for some of the websites, it's not clear how you could immediately request the data. An ideal situation would be a case where there is a way to request the data and it's automated, where data users can go fill a form, request the data without no difficult process or challenge to get the data. Now, what is the implication of our result and how does it fit into data accessibility in general? So we've been able to show that accessibility to microdata in MENA is poor. However, when you look at the Open Data Access Indicator, the ODIN, MENA countries perform rather well. Now, the ODIN accesses coverage and openness of official statistics on the website of NSOs as well. And for ODIN, in the 2018 ODIN, MENA does better than South Asia, Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and it's at par with East Asia. So what is the disconnect here, and why do our results seem to differ from the ODIN? ODIN is really important. They use a very meticulous and transparent way to document their scores. But the counterintuitive conclusions for microdata access is probably because ODIN focuses on summary data or headline statistics without necessarily capturing the underlying source of microdata from which the summary statistics is calculated. So this can be illustrated if you look at the poverty statistics category of ODIN, where ODIN assesses poverty rates and distribution of income by deciles or Gini coefficient. A country like Oman, for example, got a perfect score on the ODIN. However, the underlying data that was used to calculate that statistics was outdated. Now, it's possible that an NSO would make poverty statistic available without making the underlying household or consumption survey available. So hence the country will do well on the ODIN, but not do well on microdata access. So even the ODIN scores are excellent when you're interested in summary statistics. There is a gap. It could be enriched by looking at survey or microdata as we do to give it a more balanced view of data openness for countries in the MENA region. So in general, our results show that price data are typically collected, while census and survey data are less frequently collected. And even when data is collected, it's rarely made available. So what this tells us is that microdata access is poor. However, the ODIN says MENA is doing rather well. So even though ODIN's result of acceptable data openness in the MENA region seems good, it needs to be qualified in the sense of microdata. because our results show that microdata access in MENA is poor. So increased accessibility to data is needed in the MENA region. We do hope that you are able to read the full version of the paper that we've made available, and we look forward to your comments and suggestions. Thank you.